I would rather you be on JV and pitch than be on varsity and maybe get 10 innings all year.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because, again, to develop, you've got to be in the circle. You've got to experience those live at bats, those live batters. And I would much rather have you on the JV team for a year or two, getting some solid innings down there and experience at that level.
Whether you live northeast, west, or south, the best fast pitch info comes from the coach's mouth.
Welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast with your hosts, Jay Bolden and Ken Kraus. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast. This is Ken Kraus, here with Jay Bolden. Jay, how are we doing this morning?
Doing pretty good, Ken. We got back from Gulf Shores there a couple days ago. The weather down there was beautiful. Softball was up and down. Those are good things. But yeah, looking forward here to getting into and seeing what my kids do in high school. Some of the kids I have already, and you, I'm sure too. Illinois already has some kids playing high school ball at games.
Yeah. I had a girl play a game a couple of days ago. Her team got smoked. I was glad that she's a pitcher, but she wasn't pitching that game. And I was thinking, I'm glad that wasn't her doing that.
Good. How are other things going? Everything else good with you?
Yeah, everything else is fine. Again, lessons going on. It's been a little bit lighter this last couple of weeks as everybody's trying to figure out their schedules. And I think, with the weather in the northern part of the United States being a little bit up and down, on Monday, I think we had 70 degrees. And then yesterday it was snowing. So, it's a battle for gym space and for fields and everything else. So, people come in, they come out, they have to bail at the last minute because their practice got switched. So it's been pretty interesting.
Yeah, the weather has been absolutely crazy. Those storms that came through the other night too were absolutely nuts. Hopefully you didn't get any of those bad storms. We got lucky and it split from us. But did you get any damage with those storms?
No, we didn't get any damage. I know that a little bit further south of us there was a lot of problems. But no, for us it was just a lot of rain. There was some lightning and thunder, noise and fury, but not much else after that.
Yeah. So let's get into some topics today, Ken. I want to talk a little bit about, let's start with the high school ball first, since, it's upon us. Indiana, I think, just wrapped up their tryouts and all that stuff this week, or is still going this week. And I know Illinois has already had tryouts and is already playing. So let's give some advice out to some people, especially even to the kids. Maybe there's some players that are listening to this podcast, or there's parents. But let's talk about some things that I think can help some people. So if you don't mind, Ken, I'm going to start on this one, if that's okay.
No, go right ahead.
So I think one of the things is, a lot of times you're trying out and you want to make that varsity team, but coach sometimes puts you on the JV team. So I know that's your goal, but I think you have to work through that a little bit, especially if you're on the younger side. If you're a freshman or a sophomore, and even if you're playing high level travel ball, sometimes, it's good for you to spend a couple years or a year down at the JV level and then work your way up to that varsity spot. So, Ken, do you have any advice for people, or do you have any players that you've had that have had to deal with some of that?
Yeah, actually I have. There's one team where a couple of my best pitchers, to be honest with you, they play high level travel ball. They throw really well. They can move the ball well. They throw hard. They're on the JV team. And the only reason they're on the JV team is that their coach doesn't believe in bringing freshmen up. They seem to accept it. They understand that it's not anything personal, but that happens sometimes. There are things that you can't control. You can't control, those kinds of attitudes or those kind of thought patterns and all that. The key is to get in there and just keep playing your game. Go ahead and do the best you can. Give everything you can. Maybe take it as an opportunity. If you've got some kids on your team where maybe they don't have that much experience and they're playing, show some leadership, help them get better, work with them. there are all kinds of things you can do that will help develop you as a player as well. I know that there's an old thing about when one teaches to learn. That's really an important concept, and I think that that's something that those younger players can do. How about you, Jay?
Yeah, I think also too, Ken, it's important that if you're a pitcher or you're a pitcher parent, I understand. I would much rather. I always say this to the kids that I work with. Even if you're on JV, I would rather you be on JV and pitch than be on varsity and maybe get 10 innings all year.
Yeah. And
I think that's important because, again, to develop, you've got to be in the circle. You've got to experience those live at bats, those live batters. And I would much rather have you on the JV team for a year or two, getting some solid innings down there and experience at that level before they bring you up to varsity. And I think that's important. A lot of people are like, well, they want to be on varsity. So they go up. I've had kids that want to go up on varsity and they get barely any innings. And then it's like, okay, we didn't see any improvements here. And I think it's just always to continue to improve. What do you think about that, Ken?
Yeah, I actually agree with that 100%. In fact, my younger daughter, Kim, when she was a sophomore, they wanted to bring her up to varsity. And she asked to stay on JV because she knew that the varsity pitcher that they had, and those were in the days that they only would pitch one pitcher for the most part, they knew that the girl they had there was really good and she wasn't going to get any circle time. And rather than sit on the bench for 2 months and just get cold and kind of lose her skills, she asked if she could stay on the JV team instead and pitch for them. And she pitched every day, and it was a much better experience for her. So I think, yeah, you're right, Jay. That's so key. And it's not just for pitchers, but for anybody. It's better to be an everyday player on JV rather than being a bench warmer on the varsity team. Set your ego aside and do what's best for you as a player.
Yeah, Ken, I want to tell a quick story here about when I was a varsity coach long ago. So we're coming up on our 20-year anniversary of us going downstate in Illinois and placing in the top 4. But I want to tell a quick story. I had a freshman that year of 2006, and she came in. She played for a very high-level travel organization and comes in, and she's like, well, I'm like, what positions do you play? We were excited to have her. We had a really good year before that. We were, in the regionals and sectionals and super sectionals. We were really looking forward to that year. So she comes in and she could really help our team. She was a freshman and she was definitely going to play at our level. Again, I'm in a small school, so it's pretty easy to get on varsity there, especially if you're a high level travel ball player.
Right.
So anyway, she comes up and we're meeting each other. And I'm like, so, what position do you play? And she's like, well, I just play first base. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, listen, if you want to play first base and just get reps at first base, I'm like, I'm going to have to keep you down on the JV level. However, I have an opening. All of these kids were coming back. We had one opening and it was in the outfield and it was center field. And she was a mobile kid. She could play center field, if she wanted to. And so I said, here's what's going to happen. You can come up, we're going to bring you on varsity, but the person that's at first base has been there. I'll get you some innings here or there. So, some games here or there. I said, but I have a opening right now to be in the starting lineup as a center fielder, which we desperately need. And I said, so I'm going to give you a couple of weeks. I want you to think about that. And I'm like, can you come back and get back to me? So she comes back and she's like, I'd love to play center field. I said, here's how it works here. That kid that's at first base this year, she's going to be graduating at the end of this year. That could be your next spot for you the following year. But I really need the best 12 kids or 13 kids to be on this team so that we have a chance to really do some damage this year. And so she bought into the team. She played center field. We had a great year that year again. And so it was a really great experience. And yeah, I could remember every pitch going downstate with those kids. And that's the kind of kids that's the kind of players that we really need. It's like, hey coach, whatever I can do to help, taking out the selfishness. So I just wanted to share that story with people that sometimes you have to do something to help a high school team. That's not necessarily what you do in the summer.
Yeah. And that's true, not just in high school, but also in college. I had a player that was recruited as a catcher. And when she got there, they had a transfer that came in that the coach really liked. They gave her a couple opportunities to hit. She hit well for them when they needed it. And then one day they said, here, let's put you out in the outfield. And she had played outfield a little bit in travel ball, a little bit in high school when she wasn't catching. And she goes out there in left field and she just took the spot. And that's where she played all year long. But that wouldn't have happened. None of those opportunities would have come up if she was going to be, well, I'm a catcher. I don't want to try something new. I don't want to try a different position. So it's, it's important. You do what you can to help the team. You do what you can to help yourself by getting on the field, and then you let the rest of it sort itself out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And I hope that, people that are listening understand that. I think, to me, high school ball is important, Ken. Are there kids that don't need to, or do you need to play high school ball to be recruited? No, but if you ask college coaches, they want you to play high school ball because that setting is going to be probably more realistic to what the setting is in college, right? You're going to have those 6 days a week practices. You're going to have those consistent practices, after your classes or whatever that works in college. And that's what it's going to be like there too, in high school. Whereas travel ball is, hey, 3 days a week max. Maybe you've got 1 day of hitting for 2 hours, 1 day of defense, for 2 hours, and then you come in on a Saturday and do whatever. So you have days off in between those practices. In high school ball, you just don't have that. In college, you don't. You're practicing all the time. And so I think that experience of high school ball is important because it's going to be, it's going to be more consistent to what your college experience is going to be like. Now, as we know, the level is different.
Plus the fact that every game you play is guaranteed to be at least a 7-inning game, unless there's, a blowout or something. Whereas in travel ball these days, you get in 4 or 5 innings. That's about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge. You see, some of these travel ball games and they're, 60-minute games, some of them, right? And some of them are longer than that. But like you said, you're going to play a full 7-inning game and you have to be able, that's what you're going to get in college as well too. So that's why playing high school ball is important, right? I think just from the experience of it too is super important as well too. Is it necessary for you to be recruited? No, not really. But I still say it's an opportunity for you to have a lot of pride and play with, for your community. And on top of that, Ken, I want to say this too. It's also an opportunity for you to play with your friends, the people you go to high school with, right? Right. Compared to travel ball, you got kids from all over the place. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that, that socialization part of it, even if your team isn't very good, if you're a high-level travel ball player and you're surrounded by kids that really don't play very well, it's still a good opportunity to get out there. Now, the one exception I will make is that there are definitely, just like in anything else, there are some just unqualified coaches who are psychologically bad for the kids. And if you're in that kind of a situation where, truly it's mentally stressful and it just isn't fun for you, then yeah, there's no reason to put up with that. You can find better things to do with your time. But outside of that, yeah, playing high school ball, I think, is a good opportunity to do something a little bit different, see the sport from a different angle. Maybe you're going to get into a role that you wouldn't normally get onto with your travel ball team. So lots of pluses there.
Yeah, and I do want to say something too, Ken. Those of you who are listening in Illinois, if you didn't make the team, you didn't want to play high school ball, right? Or it just didn't work out the way that you thought it was going to be. You need to look because there are spring teams in the state of Illinois, or even if you're in Indiana, right? You need to look it up. There are spring teams. They put these teams together and they have practices. I'm not sure if it's weekly, but they also play games. And so on Sundays, I believe it's Sundays or Saturdays, they go out and they play double headers and they'll have I think at the end of the year, just a little bit of a tournament. And that goes through the time period of the high school ball. So you can still go get your reps out there. You can still play in competitive games. And I think that's a good idea. So if you didn't make the team or you didn't want to play for your high school, there are opportunities I know in Illinois, and they'll even probably take Indiana kids or, Wisconsin kids or whatever, but look it up. Just look for a spring softball team and you'll see it. It'll pop up and there is a fee, but you don't get any fancy uniforms, right? But you get I think it's like, a dry fit shirt with a number on the back.
Yeah.
And then they just, they have a red team, blue team, so on and so forth. But the kids are playing and they're getting those reps and they're playing in game situations. So that's an opportunity for you if it's out there.
Yeah. And the same thing if you're an 8th grader playing with high school freshmen. So your team isn't really playing right now. You had half freshmen, half 8th graders. There are teams out there that are looking for players that are going to play some in the spring. And so that's an opportunity for those girls as well. And this isn't just in the Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana area. I mean, this is all over the place. Now, I know places like Georgia, I think that they play their high school ball in the fall. So they're probably going full bore into travel ball right now. So sorry to bore you with this when we're talking about high school ball there, but it'll apply just as well in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. So any other tips or feedback for people that are listening, Ken, about high school ball?
I think just enjoy the experience. You know, it's the kind of thing sometimes when you're going through it, it's kind of rough and you're thinking, oh man, this isn't what I wanted to do, but you'll look back on it with fondness. I think that, you know, as with anything else, the bad stuff kind of falls away and then the good stuff comes along. And that's what remains.
Yeah, I'm just going to add one more thing, Ken. I would say this, regardless of your position, regardless of your playing time, right? Regardless of what you think, just be a really great teammate. Cheer other people on, right? Get involved with the team. Have fun. That's the number one and most important thing. But really, just be involved. You know, be a great teammate. Those are the most important things. You know, if one of your teammates is down, pick them up. You know, if somebody just hit a bomb, you know, high five them. Do the things that you want to do. Because I think that's the most important lesson you can learn is that sometimes we have to wait, but regardless of that, just be a really great teammate.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I also think that if you kind of, you know, if you're having some problems, you don't like your coach, talk to some of your friends. You may find out you've got a better coach than you thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of coaching, Ken, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about some of the advice maybe you or I have been giving that has been the absolute worst advice you've ever gotten. So now I'm going to have to lean on you here because my brain has been working here for a while, but I'm going to let you get us started if you're okay. So that way I can start thinking and pull some of those out of the vault.
Okay. Well, this is one, you know, as a pitcher's parent that I never did myself. I always understood the stupidity of it, but coaches that are telling their pitchers, so they're going to put them in, they're going to pitch batting practice, and the girls aren't hitting off of them. So the coach says, slow it down or just throw, you know, fastballs over the middle, maybe, you know, 80% fastballs. Let the hitters hit it so they can feel better about themselves and build some confidence. My thought with that always is, okay, and then at what point are we going to have the hitters purposely swing and miss so I feel better about myself?
Yeah, true. Now I will say this. That's a great one. That's a great start, Ken. I will say this. I am okay with them starting with a 1-2 count or a 2-1 count, something of that, because that still puts the pitcher into like, you know, softball IQ mode where they have to figure out what pitch am I going to throw. I'm going to add on to that too and say, this is, and I'm not making this up, but the pitcher only gets to throw 2 pitches, Ken. They can either throw their curveball or their changeup, right? And so as a hitter, again, it's putting the pitcher in a horrible spot, right? Like, you know, I'm fine with them having a count, but I am not fine with you saying, okay, well, you can only throw like your curveball and your changeup.
Yeah.
Because the hitters are going to figure that out. That just doesn't make sense. So that's some really bad stuff that I've seen. Let's keep going a little bit with this. Do you have another one? And I'll add on as we go.
Actually not coming up with one at this point. I have to cut this part out.
So that's fine. So I have one. The always bunting with a runner at first base with no outs advice was horrible for me. Right. Now, don't get me wrong, Ken. There are times where I am going to bunt with that runner on 1. Right. However, I don't feel that we should be doing that. Again, situationally, it depends a lot, but it also depends on who's up to bat. It depends on who's at first base. It depends all that. But I've been told several times that you have to bunt when you have a runner on first base. That's probably some of the worst advice I've ever been given as a coach.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that drives me crazy. The automatic sacrifice bunt. I don't understand that. And if you look at it, this isn't just you and me, our feelings about it. If you look at it statistically over a season, you're actually reducing your chances of scoring. They've run the stats. They've run it for baseball. They've run it for fast pitch softball at the college level, the high school level, doesn't matter. if you have a runner on first and nobody out, you have a 2% better chance of scoring than you do with a runner on second and one out. And that was a lot of that study was done before the bats got so hot and the hitters got so good. So, you're looking at it now, it's probably even a bigger disparity when you're coming on there. If you've got kids that can hit, let them hit.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of them you got to let swing away. And again, if we've got speed on one, we could swipe a base too, right? Like that's part of it. Now we have a runner in scoring position and that person can then swing away instead of then bunting them to third. Right. So I think that's some advice that I've been given that's been bad. Some of the other stuff, there's another one that I have here too, which it's more along the lines of the management of the team when I was a varsity coach. And that was more along the lines of that everybody has to play a certain amount of innings. And this is more geared towards high school or junior high. But it was like, okay, we've got, and I'm fine with playing kids, but I'd never wanted it dictated to me to when I had to put kids in.
Right.
So, I was always told, especially at the middle school level, well, everybody that makes a team has to get in the game. And that doesn't work all the time. Right. And so I think that's, some advice that I've had here where I've had to been like, no, like that's not going to work per game. However, if that kid doesn't get in that game, I'm going to do my best effort to get them in the next game, maybe in a starting role or in a reliever's role. But yeah, telling me that I have to get every player into every game is something that parents need to understand that too, that the situation sometimes does not allow that to happen. However, if you're a good coach, you're going to find a way in the next game to get them in and get some repetitions. How about you? Have you had any advice like that where people have told you, hey, you must get every kid in every game?
No, I mean, I always tried to do that anyway, but if you're going to do that, you have to train your kids up, because if you've got kids that just aren't playing up to the level that the other players are playing, that's going to be tougher to do. You'll get what you can for them, but it's not going to be equal playing time at any level. At least if you want to win, and I think in high school ball, that kind of thing, the goal is to win. I know it is in travel ball too, but there's, a part of it that is also people paid their money and you have a lot more choice over who you have on your team. So you have a better chance of being able to play everyone because presumably they're all at a closer level to each other. In high school, you pick from the people who go to your school, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they ain't. So trying to get an idea that everybody has to play unless you're approaching it, unless the school is approaching this as a recreational activity, it's just not going to work. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, logistically, it just sometimes can't work. Like I said, I always tried to get that kid in the next game, right? So if they didn't get in that game, I tried to start them. I tried to find a spot where I could, like, they could pinch hit or they could pinch run, whatever, and then try to get them some reps next game. But so that's been some advice there that I've had too. Yeah. So one of the other things I want to talk about is a little bit more on the lessons side of things, Ken. When I first started coaching, there was the don't stride. Did you ever have anybody tell you to have hitters not stride when they swing?
Nobody told me that one, but I've definitely seen that.
So when I started as a
not a fan.
Yeah, no, me neither. When I was a JV coach here, high school, a long time ago, the guys that were in charge of the varsity level were like, oh, you have to have all of your kids don't stride. The ball gets there too quick. The softball swing is different than the baseball swing. And so we don't want anybody striding. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So I take it with a grain of salt. Yeah. Shake my head. Fantastic. Looked at my girls and I'm like, we're going to do what's comfortable. Right. So, but yeah, the no stride was very, very taught back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it was just mind boggling to me as to why they would teach that. Now, there are certain situations, certain kids that might need to do that. As we know, motor preferences is a thing or whatever now. I get that, but that should not be cookie cutter, that everybody should not be taking a stride. So that's one. And then the second part when I was here too, is that the advice I was given, again, I'm fresh out of college, right? Wet behind the ears, coach. Advice is, everybody needs to swing down. Swing down. chop down on the ball, chop down on the ball, and then you really break it down and like, the bat's going to flatten out at some point and it's going to rise just because that's the natural movement. But those were two things that were like incredibly bad advice for me, or at least I felt looking back on it now. I was like, yeah, those things just did not make sense.
Yeah, well, and going along with that, and you kind of hinted at this as well, is the idea of swing level. And if you're saying swing level to the ground, and I think that's the way most people and certainly most kids will interpret it, that's just terrible advice, because now you have access to the top and the bottom of the ball. The top of the ball is going to get you weak ground balls, and the bottom of the ball is going to get you pop-ups.
Yeah.
You really want to have an angle on the bat. You want to kind of Nike swoosh through there if you want to get any kind of lift and get the ball to travel farther.
Exactly. I always talk about the Nike swoosh. We want to see that barrel swoosh, right? I think that's kind of where we're at with that. But yeah, I'm telling you, Ken, that was probably some of the things that was just mind boggling back in the day, was the no stride and everybody has to chop. I mean, I'm talking like literally chop down on the ball. So yeah, those are some crazy things, advice that I've been given. Do you have any others that you've been given over the years, even pitching side?
Yeah. I think that the idea, this is one that you'll hear all the time. People will tell pitchers who are struggling, they say, slow it down and just get it over. Mm-hmm. No. No. Don't do that. If the pitcher is struggling, take her out. It's okay. She'll cry a little bit, but, as long as you tell her she'll get another opportunity, hey, today's not your day, it'll be fine. But if you're going to just slow it down and try to get the ball over, you're never going to develop as a pitcher. And I think that people, even, doing lessons and stuff, they put too much focus on accuracy too early instead of letting the girls develop. To me, accuracy is an outgrowth of good mechanics. If you're throwing the ball well, then you will get the ball over the plate. You don't have to let up on it. In fact, a lot of times it works better, at least in my experience. Maybe you've had it different, but in my experience, once the kids get some innings under their belt, they're going to throw better when they throw harder. They're going to throw more accurately, more reliably, simply because they're using their body the way it's designed to be used, whatever that is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody should be chasing speed first. And I'm not saying that it's not the combination of both, but I think, we want to get the kids to learn to move first and then lock it back down and work on spots and spins. So I think the slowing it down is, that's a huge one. Like, slow it down, just get it over. Like, no, now we're just aiming and mechanics are just garbage anyway. Right. And so, does that help you with the outcome? Sure. But the process for the kid is not helping the kid at all whatsoever. So yeah, that's a great one, Ken, that you thought about there too.
Right.
Yep. So I don't have very much else. I mean, I kind of feel blessed that we've been surrounded by great coaches over the years that have kind of given us really good advice instead of, bad advice. So do you have any others that you can think of off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head. I probably should have put a little more effort into thinking through some of those things. Normally I come up with, oh yeah, wait, I have another one, but not today.
Hey Jay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important do you think brush contact is for pitchers?
It's pretty high up there, Ken. Probably a 10, since it's hard to get maximum speed or accuracy without it.
Yeah, I agree. But have you ever had a student who struggled to get good, light brush contact?
Sure, all the time, in fact. Especially when they've been taught hello elbow and are trying to throw around their hips, or they're sliding their hips out of the way doing that crazy ninja move.
So what do you do when you run into that situation? Keep railing on them until they get it right?
I used to do that a lot, but then I learned about a product called Pitch Squeak, Ken.
Pitch Squeak? What's that?
It's a cool little armband with a squeaker inside of it.
Like a dog toy?
Yeah, kinda.
So how does it work?
Well, you slip the armband onto the pitcher's forearm and you set it so the squeaker is where the brush contact should happen. Then, when the pitcher goes into release, she tries to get it to squeak, like this. If she makes it happen, she got brush. If there's no sound, she knows immediately and can make a correction.
Wow, cool. So she gets immediate audible as well as tactile feedback.
Oh, there you go again, showing off with those big and technical words again. But yeah, she can feel it and hear it.
Does it really work?
You bet it does. I use it with my students all the time, and it helps them learn how to get brush contact pretty quickly if they practice with it.
Sounds neat. Where can I get one?
Oh, it's easy, Ken. Just email support@pitchsqueak.com, and Jason, the inventor of it and a Polygirl certified pitching coach himself, will ask you how many you want and send them right out.
I'll do that today. Thanks, Jay. What's that address again?
Oh, you bet, Ken. It's support@pitchsqueak.com. One more time for those of you who are listening, support@pitchsqueak.com. And don't forget to mention in the email that you heard about it right here on From the Coach's Mouth podcast, and you'll receive 10% off. I want to switch gears. And you know what? That's a good thing, though, Ken, because I feel like you and I both have been lifelong learners. So we're still trying to learn new things. And I think that's a part of it. If we were stuck in our ways years ago, Ken, I mean, imagine where we would be. We'd be telling everybody on the podcast here to make sure you snap your wrist and, you know, point your elbow to the catcher when you finish and chop down on the ball like you're chopping wood. I mean, so those are things like I feel like I'm kind of glad, and I'm glad that I just didn't settle with what people said. I was always a, you know, show me kind of person, or let me see it. I was always more of a visual learner than people just telling me what to do. And I think that's the ticket, really. So I'm kind of blessed that we've been, you know, lifelong learners and just not just happy with what works all the time.
Yeah. And I think that it's important too, that just because somebody said something, even if it's your boss, if you're in a school situation, or, you know, the head of the program, or, you know, some famous coach said it, doesn't necessarily mean it's true. I think you have to observe what's going on. You have to see, am I getting the outcomes I want to get out of this? Just because so-and-so said to chop down doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good idea. You know, so you got to use your eyes. You have to use your brain, see what's working for you. You know, going back to when you were talking about automatic bunt on when you get a runner on first base, is that producing runs for you? Or do you start out, so now you have a runner on second with one out, and then your next hitter comes up and hits a ground ball and the runner gets to third. Now you got a runner on third with two outs. Well, it doesn't take too much to get that third out, and you just wasted a base runner.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Hey, Ken, before we switch gears into our next topic, do you want to give people some information about how you and I were guests on a podcast? Not this one, but on actual somebody else's podcast?
Yeah, actually, that was kind of fun. The Everything Fast Pitch podcast, the first episode came out the first week of March, I believe. And then the second half of our interview with them is coming out this week. Probably, it'll have been out for a week by the time this one airs.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun talking to Tori over there, Tori Atchison. And he was just kind of asking us some questions about how we got started. I didn't get a chance to tell my story, though. I was going to tell him that this was originally your idea. And when you first mentioned it, I thought, wow, I hope Jay asked me to be a guest someday. That would be fun to do.
Guests? Well, this was just a thought, Ken. It wasn't even, listen, if I did 4 episodes, I was going to say that I did a podcast. So you're the guy keeping this thing moving. So there's nobody, again, I've been reading your blog for years. So a lot of the stuff that I know, I got from you. So who else better to do this podcast with than you? And if anybody who's listening who is not reading Ken's blog, you guys are missing out, right? And, you know, it's one of the most, isn't it the highest read softball blog in the country?
Pretty close to it. It depends on when you do your Google search, but it definitely shows up high, usually above the fold, as they say. You know, it'll be up there in the screen. So, yeah, that's Life in the Fast Pitch Lane. Just look it up under that name. And, you know, I've been doing this, gosh, I think since about 2008. So it's been a long time. It's amazing I can still come up with topics, although I'm to the point now where I actually have to go onto the blog and search. When I get a good idea for a headline, I have to search on there to make sure I haven't written that one already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's just challenging yourself. So yeah, I mean, again, might have been my idea, but it's a 2-headed monster. Like I say every week, buddy, podcast wouldn't be what it is without you. And again, so it might've been my idea, but it's our podcast now, buddy.
Yep, for sure.
All right.
And it's fun. I'm having a blast doing it. talking to people, and as people listen to it and they seem to like it. So, hopefully we're helping to, get some people informed, change some minds, have some fun. That's an important part of it too.
Yes. And we have some things coming up that if you're a listener and you're not following us on Spotify or anything like that, we've got a little incentive for you to click that little follow button that'll be coming out here. We'll let you guys know about that on social media and probably in the next podcast or so, but we've got some things that Ken and I are excited about. We're going to give to you if you give us a follow and a share. So yeah, we're going to figure that out. But regardless of that, we're excited for where this podcast is going, and it's exciting. So it was really cool to be a guest on somebody else's podcast, Ken. I mean, that's like, wow, like people actually, again, I say it all the time. I can't believe people want to talk to us or want to hear us talk about softball, but it's really cool. And I'm grateful for the opportunities to do this. And I love it. And that was really humbling for me to be able to talk about my past. And I'm sure it was for you too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, to be on the other side of the mic, I guess, to be the one, being asked the questions instead of asking the questions and tell our story a little bit. It was a lot of fun. So give that a listen. Again, it's Everything Fast Pitch. You can find that on Spotify and Apple and all the usual places, all the usual suspects. So give it a listen. Yeah.
All right. So let's switch gears here. And I know you said you haven't watched a lot of softball, but I've been watching quite a bit, especially some of the higher end games, especially the pitching part. So it's really not that I want to talk so much about what's going on at the NCAA level or Division I level, but it's really, I want to talk about pitching, Ken.
Okay.
Because what I'm seeing is something that is really, really cool. First of all, I want to talk about some surprises for teams. Belmont is, man, that kid, Maya Johnson, she can absolutely chuck it. And I think she's a senior this year, so that's going to be a kid that I'm going to try to get on this podcast after she graduates. But I can't even imagine thinking about, that's in the Missouri, they're in the Missouri Valley Conference, which is always a very solid conference. I can't imagine Belmont. And now let's remember, she had 15 or 14 strikeouts against Georgia, and they beat Georgia 2-1. She's had several games where she's just dominated some of these higher end Power 4, Power 5 teams. And my point is Belmont, if they win the Missouri Valley Conference, are going to come in as a 4 seed playing a 1 seed. That's scary. Yeah. That's got to be scary for somebody who, wherever Belmont goes to their regional, if Belmont makes it there, or whoever comes out of the Missouri Valley, is still going to be tough because you're dealing with some really good pitchers in the Missouri Valley Conference. I think that anybody coming out of that conference as a 4 seed into that regional is going to be scary for a 1 seed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. And it just goes to show you that you don't have to be at a Power 4 school to be good, to win. Every year it seems like there's somebody, some school that comes out of nowhere. Liberty did that a couple of years ago where nobody expected them. I'm trying to remember some of the other schools, but yeah, it's just like all of a sudden they just get hot, they're doing well. And, you just never know. That's why you have to play the game, right? That's why you don't just, look at it on paper and give the win to whoever looks like they should be the ones that win.
Yep. So I want to get into some of the pitching side of this. These are things that I've been paying attention to, Ken. I'm seeing, and I know that travel ball coaches they're going to steam when I say this, but I'm seeing pitchers mid-major to Power 4, Power 5. When they throw their changeup, they're leaving it dead red down the middle, and the kids are not touching the ball. It just freezes them. And I hate it when coaches, we want it low and away, or we want it low and in. And I get that. That's an important part to put that ball there. But if you sell that changeup well enough, right, and your mechanics are in line to where it's deceptive, you can leave that ball dead red down the middle and still get people to not swing at it or pop it up. And that's huge. And so I want to go back. I was watching Nebraska versus Oklahoma State, and you had Jordy Fromm on there, and you had, I think it's Ruby Malin, right? And I'm watching these two pitch, Ken, and these hitters for both sides were clueless in that game, because every time they threw a ball, right? Jordy has her drop ball. She has a changeup. She has a rise ball, right? That's it pretty much from what I understand of her. And Ruby Malin, I think, is kind of on the same boat. I know they both go to the same pitching instructor who's a good friend of ours, Darren Dubsky. And so I'm watching these two girls go battle these lineups, and they're leaving their changeups down the middle because those kids think they're either getting a rise or a drop out of that kid's hand. And they're just freezing them and striking them out. The kids aren't even attempting to swing at the ball. Ken, what do you think about leaving the changeup down the middle?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge advocate of that, Jay. And there was a study a few years ago, I think down in Florida, where they looked at it. It was mostly against Power 4, maybe Power 5 at the time, but Power 4 opponents. And they looked at, where were they getting swings and misses? Where were they getting their strikes from? Where were they not getting contact from? And on the changeup, even at that level, the great majority of the pitches were just down the middle. I think you can try to get too cute trying to throw that changeup inside, outside. I'd rather put that effort, like you say, into selling the pitch. Make sure that you're maintaining your arm speed all the way through. Make sure that you are getting the same amount of leg drive. I stress that all the time in lessons with the kids. Is just, you got to throw the snot out of that ball. And if you're throwing it correctly, it will change speeds. It won't look like what it should look like coming out of your hand based on what your body is doing. And that's what's going to fool the hitters. That's what's going to freeze them because their brains are expecting one thing. They see something completely different. And by the time that pitch gets there, it's too late for them to do anything about it.
Yeah. The other thing I'm seeing too, Ken, is I'm gonna list off some pitchers that are pitching, and they're very high level. We have Kavan at Texas.
Right.
You've got Kennedy at Texas Tech. Right. We already talked about Jordy Ball. We talked about Ruby Malin. Right. The common denominator in those kids, or those pitchers, those pitchers that I mentioned, is that they all have very good vertical stuff. Mm-hmm. Right. And to me, and not only that, but they're able to throw their vertical stuff, Ken, at 2 different levels, sometimes 3, meaning they can throw the low rise right in, they can throw, and then the rise out. And then some of them can even put it at a 3rd level if they want. Same thing with the drop. Like it was cool to see Jordy throwing the drop ball hard where it was biting early, and then she would throw it late too when the hitters were making adjustments. But all of those pitchers that I'm mentioning have a really great vertical pitch. And I think that's the missing piece for a lot of these people. Now, I didn't watch Maya Johnson pitch, but I'm going to guess she's a lefty, that she probably has a really good rise ball. After we get off this podcast, I'm going to go see if I can get some video and see what her number 1 pitch is. And I'm probably sure she has a really good changeup too. But what do you think about having to have a vertical pitch, either the rise or the drop? Or another thing I want you to talk about, Ken, is this. There have been people that I have heard that have gotten on social media and said, well, you cannot have a really good rise ball and a really good drop ball. It's very few can do that. And I'm seeing more and more kids that can do that. What about you?
I think that's actually true to some extent. I wouldn't ever say you can't. That's certainly not a thing. I think it's more difficult for some than others. And that just has to do with how they come into the release. Some people can maintain their supination better, and they might be a little bit better on the up pitches. Some are better pronators, and they're going to be better on the down pitches. But like anything else, it's something you can learn. It's just a matter of, are you going to put the effort into it? So you've got a pitcher, let's say, that pitched in travel ball, pitched in high school, and was able to get everybody out with her rise ball. All right. So she goes to school, goes to college. All of a sudden, well, they're laying off that rise ball. Now what? So she's going to have to develop that other pitch, that the drop ball, so that there's a bit of a mix. There's no absolutes in any of this stuff. And again, some things are going to be easier for some than others, but that doesn't mean that you just say, okay, well, I'm just going to stick with what's easy. I think sometimes you just have to work it, and it can be more frustrating, but give it a try. Keep working on it.
Yeah, I want to say, like, when I'm doing instruction, right, the first thing that I'm teaching a kid is a drop ball. Now, what I mean by that is it's really their fastball. I want your fastball to have downspin on it. So, I don't want people to get confused and think that I'm teaching a kid to have that turnover drop or anything like that. Like, to me, your fastball should be your drop ball. We want the same speed, if not more. We want a hard biting axis on the spin axis on that ball. I tell my kids all the time, I don't know why you ever want to throw a ball that just doesn't move. Right. And so for me, a lot of my kids will have decent drop balls or good drop balls because it's just the first pitch that we talk about. And it's how I kind of teach mechanics. And then I do have kids that have both really good hard drops and some really good rise balls. So it's out there. I will say, yes, some are better supinators than pronators, so on and so forth. But yeah, I think the way that we kind of teach things too is important too. If you're teaching a kid to throw a turnover drop where they're pulling the shoulder forward and the hands rolling over the ball, you're forcing the hand over the ball, you're probably not going to have a good rise ball because that shoulder is going to turn forward. And as you heard Bill Hillhouse tell you, hey, you got to hide the shoulder to get under the rise ball longer. So, I think those are important things, like how you teach things to people too, is maybe that's why some people don't have good rise balls and good drop balls, is because we're teaching them things that probably we shouldn't be teaching them just to make the ball go up or just to make the ball go down.
Yeah, well, and definitely I think that's one of the things is sometimes what's being taught is the problem and it's limiting other things. I'm glad you brought that up about the drop ball, because I was just thinking about that, kind of coming back full circle on bad advice. I have a girl, Lila, who she's one of my pitching students, but then her team brings in someone to work with their pitchers. And she was telling me that the coach was saying, that other coach was saying to, throw your shoulder. You got to throw your shoulder over. You got to turn your hand over like this. And I told her, no. Don't bother with that. You don't need all of that. You can just let the ball go, just get a good release, and, the ball will go down. You don't have to go through all that stuff. Well, last night I put her on the Pitch Logic ball. Jay, you wouldn't believe it. This girl is 12 years old. She's playing 11U ball. She had almost perfect 6 o'clock. I think it was 5:30. She's a lefty. 5:30 to 6 o'clock spin direction with 95 to one time even 100% efficiency.
Wow.
And it's like, so you want to tell this kid that she's got to throw her shoulder over and do these other things to try to get to something that she's already doing. It's just, it's crazy to me.
Again, I say this all the time, Ken, when I'm doing lessons. We'll talk about, hey, well, show me your curveball and it'll go to the left, but there's no break in it. I'm like, well, in this building, that's not a curveball. Right. So, and I think that's the point of it. Forcing your hand down to make the ball go down and calling it a drop is not a drop ball. It's just, again, you're probably going to get some crazy bull spin. You might actually get solid 6 o'clock spin on that because the ball's already out of the hand before you force the shoulder and the hand over anyway. However, good luck trying that on a curveball where you're yanking your shoulder all the way across, or the best one is finish all the way to your front pocket. And I'm like, if we even talk about what the body is doing when we throw a curveball, and if you're finishing to your front pocket, and I ask kids all the time, well, when you throw your curveball, does your curveball ever just stay and go down the middle? Oh, yeah. And I'm like, well, here's why. Because this is where the ball's exiting the hand, because you're trying to torque this hand and body all the way across to throw the ball just across to that plate. We got to learn how to spin that ball. Yeah. So again, it's crazy. It's just, it's mind boggling to me, Ken, that like I said, we see this. Those are the bad advices. Like, let's land and yank our body all the way over here, or land this way and throw it, or just finish with your hand all the way up on a rise ball, or just throw the ball up. Like, just get under the ball and bring my fingers underneath it. I've heard that too. I'm like, what is going on? How are we teaching that? But those are the things I think that, that really just boggle my mind. If you just take the time to break it down, you'll see exactly what's going on a good curveball pitcher,
Right.
So,
right. And I think that the idea of the cookie cutter teaching, that we have to have everybody do the same thing, it's not going to work that way. Everybody's built differently. Everybody moves a little bit differently. Their muscles are a little bit different. You have to kind of find what gets you to what you need. And that's going to be different for each one of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think some of those things that even I always try to break it down and like, I'm always using, what I see on TV as to like what's really happening and not happening. And so a lot of times it's like trying to get them to understand that it is important. It's like, okay, what's the goal here? Well, it's to, I want to play college softball. Okay, well, we've got to pitch like some of those people that you're seeing on TV right now. And mechanically, I tell them all the time, if you are a pitcher's parent or just a travel softball dad or mom, watch some college softball a little bit because it'll really open your eyes. And we're in the most pristine moment right now where every pitch that you see on TV for the most part is going to be slow mode, and you can see the release of what's actually happening instead of and then go to your instructor and be like, well, why is she releasing like this? But you're telling my daughter to release like that. Have them explain it to you, right? I say that all the time. Like, these people that you see on TV have given us a roadmap, right? Like, we just have to follow it. We have to understand how they're moving. Is everything going to be identical? No, there's going to be differences. I totally get that. However, things that we are being taught and what we see on TV are, or what we're teaching, you and I are teaching, are sometimes the exact opposite of what other people are teaching. And that's why I say, like, going and watching some of these games and again, being a college coach myself, seeing the mechanics, I don't see some of the stuff that's being taught by some of these other people. So what about you, Ken? Do you see anybody, Ken, in college softball finishing with hello elbow? Do you see that?
No, not really. If you see anything like that, it's usually an after the fact kind of move. So it's like the vestigial tail. You have some people that have a little bit of a tail to them that goes back through evolution. It's that same kind of thing, is that they were taught hello elbow. They couldn't quite break the habit. They're throwing well. And then, half a second after they've released the ball, then their arm just kind of lifts up like that out of habit, but it's not contributing to the pitch. You just don't see it.
Yeah, not at all. And that's the point. But yet you have some people out there who are teaching that. And I don't see that when I'm watching even mid-majors. A lot of the mid-major pitchers have really great mechanics if you just pay attention to them.
I wanted to ask you one, Jay. So 4-seam versus 2-seam. Every now and then I see this, a kid comes in and someone's teaching them to throw their fastball with 2 seams. You're going to get up in the horseshoe and you're going to throw it that way, or they're going to throw this pitch with 2 seams or that one. And they're messing around with that kind of stuff. I am not a fan of that, especially at the younger ages, because we want to get the ball to go where it's intended to go. That's going to happen a lot more easily with a 4-seam fastball, a 4-seam drop ball, and the ball is going to move ball is going to move more because you have 4 seams cutting through the air in whatever direction. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I stick predominantly with the 4-seam, but I will say this: if you're going to throw a 2-seam pitch, then you better have something else that matches it, right? So if I have a 2-seam curveball, right, and we're going to throw that, then we better have another pitch that's going to match that 2-seam curveball, right? I think that to me is more important. Do I have kids that throw 2 seams? I do, right? And some of those grips actually work better. I would say when they're first starting out, I predominantly stick to 4-seam, and then we kind of then move over into a 2-seam. Now, disclaimer, I actually teach a 2-seam rise ball, which is, I know that's going to make people boggle their minds and all that stuff. And technically, I don't know if it really is, but when I teach the rise ball, I use the men's grip a lot. Uh-huh. It's a fingertip grip. And then I also say too, like, if we're going to have a fingertip grip, then we need to make sure that we're coming out of glove. Most of my kids with the fingertip grip are coming out of glove, or they have another pitch that has a fingertip on it, right? So they'll have a changeup that has just a tip of the finger on it, or they'll have a curveball that they kind of tip it. So we're not giving that pitch away when we're doing it. And it's worked well for a lot of my kids, Ken. It's not a pure backspin ball, right? So believe me when I tell you, I also have kids who have really good 4-seam, rise balls. And I actually have one that throws as we call it, the fatty rise, and her ball's great. But I also have the 2-seam grip, which I use the men's grip on, the fingertip grip on, which isn't a pure backspin ball, but it does get some backspin on it, right? So it kind of lifts and runs. And I like it because it does have a jump in it. My kid I've got a few of them that throw it. I got a kid at Toledo that throws it. I've got a kid that's going to Illinois State at 27 who throws it. I've got actually 2 of them who both throw that one. And it just seems to work really well for them. So again, grip is more of individual based. I teach it when I have kids that really have a hard time getting the thumb off the ball through that release. It just really helps get the fingertip kind of into the ball and over. So it doesn't give a bullet, Ken, but it's almost on a tilted axis, if you will. So it still picks up some backspin, but it's not pure, right? So that it's got a lift and a run to it. So that's kind of me. But I do agree with you, Ken. Most of my younger kids, I start them out at 4-seam grips. I love the 4-seam drop. I love the 4-seam rise. Like if I can stay on that, I will. But if not, I've got to try to help each kid individually. And so the ones that I've gone to the fingertip grip with, it's really my kid at St. Xavier. She throws the fingertip and her rise ball jumps like crazy. And it's like I said, it's not pure, but it does get some really good jump on it. So that's kind of my thought on that is like, if you are going to teach a kid a 2-seam fastball, then they better have a 2-seam curveball. It's got to be deceptive. If you've got different spins coming at batters are going to pick that stuff up. They just will.
Yeah. And, same thing, different grips. If every pitch has to have a different grip, I think that it becomes a lot easier to pick those pitches, especially as they get older.
Yes.
So, you want to try to have as many pitches with the same grip. Like for me, a fastball, a changeup, a drop ball, they're all going to have the same grip, just pretty much automatically. So, if you're going to do the 2-seam, if you want to try to get it to run a little bit inside or outside as they get older, yeah, that makes sense. But to me, the first thing you want to do, so with a younger player, first thing you want to do is to have them be able to throw strikes. Everybody's going to be yelling at them to throw strikes. So if they've got a pitch that's kind of dipping off one way or the other and they already have control trouble, it's just going to make it that much worse.
Yep, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Ken. So anything else you want to talk about today? We've been on, almost an hour now, yapping here. Hopefully people have listened to it and gotten some information from us.
Yeah, I'm sure we made a few people mad as we were talking about things that they've been teaching. And all I can tell you with that is, as Jay was saying, take a look at what you see in college ball. Take a look at what you see in the AUSL. What are those pitchers doing? Are they doing all these crazy things that you're trying to get across? What are the hitters doing? Are they doing all these crazy things you're trying to teach your kids? Or are they doing something different? And if you're not seeing what you're teaching, then maybe it's time to go back and rethink what you're teaching. I do it all the time. Jay does it all the time. If I'm teaching the same things in 5 years from now that I am right now, I'm going to feel like I failed.
Yeah. Amen to that. Keep learning, keep growing. I think that's the biggest thing. And challenge things. Look at it, right? I say it all the time. Look at things, like break it down. Use video. Video doesn't lie, right? So I think those are important things. So awesome, Ken. It was a good episode today. Do you want to take us out, or you got anything else you want to talk about?
I don't think I have any other topics to come across today.
Can I say one more thing before we go?
Yeah, sure.
Be ready, because Ken, like I said, Ken and I are going to have a little incentive for some people that will actually like us on Spotify, or, give us a follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, right?
Yeah.
A like and a share. And we got a little incentive for you. If you do that, you'll have to kind of show us or email us or something to let us know that you did it. But stay tuned. Hopefully probably in the next episode, we'll talk a little bit more about it. Maybe there'll be a picture or something like that too, that you'll understand. But we're excited, and we want to get some stuff out to some people who've been listening to us, and we appreciate you guys. So just stay tuned for that. We got a little incentive coming, little giveaway kind of thing. So please make sure you are staying tuned.
Yeah, we're definitely excited for that, and we love all of you. So we're looking forward to hearing from you when we get that launched. Okay, that's it for us this week. Thanks to all of you for listening and the kind words you've been sharing with us. If you like what you're hearing, please remember to give us a like, leave a comment, and share this podcast on your social media channels. Make sure you never miss an episode by following us on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're so inclined, you can also leave us a great review on Apple Podcasts to help more people find us. You can also leave something on the Facebook page as well. We do check comments. So on behalf of the From the Coach's Mouth podcast, have a great rest of your week and weekend.